So, Cooper Kupp has been a fantasy MVP all season long. We know this. He's the favorite for most receiving yards in the game at plus 120, obviously, and minus 190 for an anytime touchdown. So chase or fade with Kupp as the shortest odds for the most categories.
Yeah, so he has the shortest odds in like most of these receiving categories.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that question, so thank you for clarifying.
That was my fault. I'll take that one.
Or like you could look somewhere else. You could look to Jamar Chase for value in receiving categories. Or do you feel like his matchup with Jalen Ramsey is making you stick with Kupp here, Pearce?
Do we need to practice before we get on the air? I don't know.
We don't. We never do.
Yeah, if you think we practice at all, like, yeah, buddy, we've got news for you.
Join the club. All right, so I'm going to fade Kupp. I'll chase, but not necessarily from the receptions, the receiving yards. Look at his rushing total. It's just 2.5 yards. He's had 5 rushes for 28 yards in the playoffs. They've given him a rush attempt every single game. He went over that in two times. One time he only got 2 yards. But I'll take my chances here. He's going to get a rush attempt. They're going to try to do whatever they can in the biggest game of the season to get the ball in the hands of one of their best players, if not their best player. So I'll definitely take my chances with a talented Jamar Chase getting getting 3 yards on a rush attempt.
All right, Geoff, we got Pearce rolling with Jamar Chase. What do you think of that?
I mean, I'm just glad that you guys clarified that question because I was going in I didn't read it properly either. I was going in a completely weird way.
Yeah.
Now that I have read it and I know what's going on, I think that you can fade Cooper Kupp in a couple different categories. I mean, I think the most receiving yards is actually the most interesting one. T. Higgins is a guy who's spiked up for just massive games. And I mean, we're in a situation where I like the Bengals, but they are still the underdogs. They're probably going to be passing a lot against the Rams team. Teams tend to just, throw the ball more against the Rams. Just their average pass attempts, opponents against the Rams were top 10 in terms of pass attempts per game. And T. Higgins, again, down the stretch, especially developed a really good chemistry with Joe Burrow. So I think T. Higgins at plus 600 is a player you can fade Cooper Kupp at. And even just sticking with that category, I think it's a good one to fade Kupp at because you've got guys down there like even Joe Mixon at plus 4,000. I mean, breaking 2 screen passes off, getting like 120 yards. We've seen Joe Mixon do that before. Certainly against a good rush defense like that, they'll be utilizing him in the screen game. So I think that's a good category to fade Cooper Kupp. But Pearce makes a good point. It's not a player you want to be fading in every category this week. I just think that there's specific spots where you can go against them.
All right, Steve, now that you also understand the question, where are you going for this one?
Do I understand the question? Kind of. It's a weird question. Like, let me tell you something. This is not getting clipped up for anything. I'll tell you that. That's the real answer to this one. To be fair, I think that Kupp getting the most receiving yards does make the most sense, but I think you also need to look at it as how do you think this game is going to play out? Do you like the Rams to win or do you like the Bengals to win? Because obviously, the other team is the one that's going to be passing more in this spot. So if you like that there, I mean, these are 2 guys that have the highest ADOTs on their team with Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp. We see when, the Rams are down, how many times did we see the ball go towards Cooper Kupp? I mean, this is somebody who has at least 7 targets in every single game this season. So it's hard to fade somebody of that caliber, of that type of volume. So, I like Kupp for most receiving yards. Anytime touchdown, yeah, it's juiced up, but throw it in one of those same game parlays. Don't try to sit here and say you're not going to be placing 1,000 bets on the Super Bowl. So I mean, come on, there's ways that you can put that bet in, but I think overall, I think Kupp's the safest option.
All right, Pearce, if the defenses though try to shut down these top wideouts, guys like Kupp and Jamar Chase, I mean, let's chase or fade this. Like Beckham, Jefferson, Higgins, and Boyd are good bets to hit their overs and actually give value to bettors.
Yeah, let's chase T. Higgins. I know 69.5 might seem like a high number for T. Higgins, but he is a wide receiver number 1. He proves it every week. Last week, Kansas City double-teamed Jamar Chase. That left one-on-one coverage on T. Higgins. Felton was on him, and Felton has a PFF grade of 82, but he couldn't stop T. Higgins. T. Higgins caught 6 catches for over 100 yards. This week, he's got an even easier matchup. He's going to face a 5'9 cornerback and a 5'11 cornerback. He's 6'4". They're not going to stop him on these short routes. They're not going to be able to contain him on the slant routes, and they won't be able to contain him on the deep routes. He produces every single week. I think you just keep riding T. Higgins.
All right, who do you want to ride here, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in lockstep here with Pearce. I mean, just to throw out more numbers against the Rams, I mean, teams are averaging 39.3 pass attempts against them, the third most in the league. That's just over their last 3 games as well. So, again, with the Bengals coming in and just, them sitting as underdogs, so you've got to think we're probably in line for like 35-plus Joe Burrow pass attempts conservatively. And, Jamar Chase isn't Cooper Kupp. He's a very good receiver, but he's probably not going to get 12 targets in this game. It's just not really been how the Cincinnati Bengals have dealt out their targets. They've been a much more committee, group. And so sometimes Chase will pop up with like a 10-target game if it's really working. But is it really going to be working all game with Jalen Ramsey out there? Probably not. I think going over on all these guys that we've mentioned, T. Higgins is my favorite. But, I mean, the props on Odell Beckham aren't that huge either. So you could even take a shot with him, 63.5 to go over his receiving yards. Teams are averaging like 39 pass attempts against the Bengals here too. The more I look at this game, the more I think we're just going to see more passing than people think. I know it's a Super Bowl and people are expecting conservative play, but I'm just not sure that that's going to play out that way. I think you're going to see a large smattering of wide receivers go over their props, and T. Higgins definitely my favorite as well.
All right, Bukes. OBJ 63.5, Higgins 69.5, Boyd 40.5, Van Jefferson 31.5. Any one of those stick out to you?
Yeah, give me that Odell Beckham one. I feel like that's about 5 or 6 yards too low. Like, people want to say maybe it's an overreaction from the game that he had last week against the 49ers. But, I mean, this is somebody who has 19 targets in the playoffs. If you can't tell me that Matt Stafford is leaning on this guy as the 1B to the 1A of Cooper Kupp, then I'll just point to these numbers here. I mean, he's approaching 200 yards in those 2 games, and he's quite frankly the guy that they go to if Cooper Kupp is not open. And then you also have to factor in Tyler Higbee. Is he going to be ready for this game? If he's not, that could be even more targets to Odell Beckham in the middle of the field. Tyler Higbee's been more of a factor than I think people give him credit for. So I think this is a great spot for OBJ in a game that, I like the Bengals to win. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing from the Rams. So that number, I'd play that all the way up to 69.5. At 63.5, that feels like a steal for somebody that's gone over that in 2 straight games now.
All right, we aren't exactly expecting a ground and pound game, right? So Cam Akers is the Rams' #1 back on the depth chart, but chase or fade Sony Michel or Darrell Henderson will outproduce Akers next Sunday, Jeff. What do we think?
Yeah, no, I'll chase this one. I'll chase it from the fact that like Cam Akers could potentially get there if the Rams, maybe fall behind a little bit and they start using him a little bit more in the passing game. Bengals are not good at defending against tight ends or running backs, so Akers could get there from that perspective, but I just feel like the Rams have seen enough with Cam Akers running the ball the last 2 weeks. I mean, they just about blew them out of the playoffs single-handedly against Tampa Bay, and then he's just produced like 3 yards per carry on 1 million carries over the last 3 weeks as well. I think you're going to see Sony Michel pop up more in this game than people realize. I think you can even see him pop up in the red zone. So from a fantasy perspective, I'll chase that Sony Michel does outproduce Cam Akers, because I think there's a good chance you see a Sony Michel like red zone, inside the 5-yard touch. And if that results in the touchdown, I think that'll push it over. Cam Akers just has not done much to move the ball. So there's no explosive plays coming from Cam Akers. If he gets there, it's because he got 20 touches again, and he got like 5 catches for 20 yards or something. So I think this one's worth chasing. I think Sony Michel is worth chasing this week. I like him in the touchdown prop category as well. Anytime scorer plus 240.
All right, Steve, in 3 games, Akers has 54 runs for 151 yards, 6 catches for 62 yards.
Yeah, elementary math says that's not very good.
Nope.
Right? You get all those carries, you get all that volume, and you're only producing that amount of yards. I mean, Cam Akers, it's a great story that he's come back on the field, but we can't all say here with a straight face that he's doing what the Rams offense needs him to do. He is not producing. To be fair, Sony Michel took the ball 10 times in that last game against the 49ers, 16 yards. I thought these guys are running backs. They're not doing anything but not run. They're not running the ball efficiently at all. So, Jeff's saying that maybe Sony Michel gets more involved. I mean, maybe that's the case. I mean, he was obviously much more productive when Cam Akers was off the field, but, we're pulling hairs here. I mean, it's not like Sony Michel is like this, the Derrick Henry in the wings or something like that. Like, they're both average quarterbacks at this point. Cam Akers is the much more talented back, but he's just not ready to play yet. I think it's fairly clear at that. And then Darrell Henderson, look, all they're going to do is change him from street clothes to a uniform if he's lucky. If they activate him, he's not going to see the field, maybe one or a couple handful of snaps at best. But I think at the end of the day, maybe Sony Michel does get a little more looks in this game.
All right, Pearce, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm going to chase Sony Michel, but I'm not really excited about it. It's more just not believing in Cam Akers. He has not looked good. And you're going to hear about the fumbles. We've talked about the fumbles all postseason. You're going to have to hear about it for a whole other week. But if a guy's fumbling the ball, he's probably not going to get very many goal line works. Those are more than likely going to go to Sony Michel. Maybe Akers gets work, but then again, Akers hasn't practiced this week. He's now got a shoulder injury as well. So maybe he'll be healthy by game time. But if I'm Sean McVay, I probably want to go with the running back that's been practicing the last 2 weeks, who's been, practicing the game plan, might be more prepared for the game. And then if you look at what Cam Akers has done in the postseason, 2.8 yards per carry, maybe you look specifically at the last game against San Francisco before he got injured and say, oh, well, those numbers aren't that bad. Well, if you take out his 14-yard carry against San Francisco, his numbers drop right back down to 2.8 yards per carry. That's just not exciting. That's not getting it done. Might as well give Michel a look.
Well, guys, there's also potential, we know this, for a high-scoring game with these two offenses. But we have a couple teams that have turned the tide on defense, especially like in recent weeks here. So let's chase or fade this. We have a defensive performance from one side in this game that ends up being the difference. So like Steve, similar to what we saw out of Tampa Bay last year against the Chiefs.
No.
Okay, that was easy.
It's let's be fair. Like maybe it's from the defensive line of the Rams, right? And that's then the big story here. That what team are we talking about? The Rams. Yeah. The Rams defensive line is gonna wreak havoc on Joey Burrow, right? This is also somebody who was wreaked havoc against the Titans and then had one of his best performances despite all of that. This is somebody who was sacked 9 times, but he still threw the ball 37 times, completed 28 of those pass attempts for 348 yards and a 75.7% completion percentage. Granted, he didn't throw a touchdown in that game, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They made it to the Super Bowl. So is he going to be under pressure? Is that going to be a difference maker? Yes, but we also saw the adjustments that the Bengals made in that game against the Chiefs. Yes. He came out, quick passes very quickly, and then the second half, it wasn't even an issue. This is a defensive line. You might not be able to make enough changes to, kind of quell that, but to be fair, the Bengals, the adjustments they made against the Chiefs, that's a big reason why they're here in the Super Bowl. Yeah, for sure. So, like, Pearce, the Bengals held the Chiefs to just 3 points, right, across second half and then overtime. Then we saw the Rams outscoring the Niners 13-0 in the fourth last week. It's like, could we get a similar performance for, next week in the Super Bowl?
I'll chase a big game for the Bengals, but it's not going to be a dominant whistle-to-whistle performance. What we'll probably see from the Bengals, which is what we typically see, is decent defense, and they just make the big plays when they have to, and that's pretty much what their scheme is. They've got a good front four that can get pressure on the quarterback. They don't blitz very often. They can leave their secondary back in coverage, and so you get pressure on Stafford. He then passes into coverage, and it results in an interception. Could result into a pick six. We've seen Stafford make mistakes all season. That's not going to change all of a sudden. We've seen Stafford make big mistakes all season. He probably shouldn't even be playing right now, but he caught a couple breaks in the last game. I expect Stafford to continue to make poor passes. He's going to make poor passes under duress, into coverage. And you look at what the Bengals have done. Why are they here? Because they intercepted the last pass of the game against Las Vegas. Because they intercepted a play by Tannehill, set up a game-winning field goal. Because they intercepted Patrick Mahomes in overtime. I don't think they're going to be great, but they're going to make the plays when they have to. It's part of their scheme.
Jeff, Bengals and Rams, they shut down their opponents when it mattered most last week. A trip to the Super Bowl, like, on the line here. Also a total 48.5. I mean, do you see one of those sides possibly stepping up and we get like a defensive affair here?
I mean, we're not going to get a defensive affair. I don't think we're going to get like a 17-3 game. I'd be pretty surprised if that happened. I think what we're going to see, though, I'm pretty much, hate to say it, but I'm in lockstep with Pearce. I think that the defensive plays are going to come from the Bengals. Everybody's worried about the pressure rate on Joe Burrow. Oh, Aaron Donald's going to sack him into oblivion. Joe Burrow's been sacked into oblivion all season. He doesn't care. He's got the best passer rating under pressure. What's going to change? I think the Rams are in trouble in this game, and I think the plays will come from the Bengals secondary because that's where the plays have been coming. They picked off Ryan Tannehill. They made Mahomes look bad at the end of the last game. What more do we need to see here? I think you could see Stafford make some big mistakes here, and I think you could see him get picked off a couple times. Doesn't mean the game's going to be a defensive struggle because the Rams will still move the ball. Cooper Kupp will come back on the next play and score a 50-yard touchdown. But I do think that the side you should be looking at here for plays is on the Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay, I'm just going to remind everyone, I believe the total for Rams-Patriots a few seasons ago was set at like 58 points. I think that was the highest over-under for a Super Bowl in NFL history.
9-6 that game or something?
Yeah, and we all I have to say is we ended up with a, 13-3 game?
I remember Steve picked Philip Dorsett for his MVP in that game.
Oh, hey, former first-round pick. That's okay.
Got 0 catches.
Never forget. Okay, guys, the sportsbook does mostly agree that it will be pretty close throughout the game, okay? So the prop for largest lead of the game is -130 for under 14.5 and -120 for the game to be tied again after that initial 0-0 start. So chase or fade, we do get a back and forth, close game from start to finish, Pearce.
I'll chase that it's a close game. I don't know if it's going to be back and forth, high scoring. I think the defenses are going to be decent, and they're going to contain these offenses. I don't think they're going to be great by any means, but we also have two offenses that are loaded with weapons that should score 30 points every single week, but they don't do that. Both these teams are not the model of consistency. You know, Matt Stafford and even Joe Burrow, under pressure constantly, they'll score when they have to. They'll put points on the board when they need to, but they're not consistently pouring the points on their opponents. I expect 3-and-outs, punts. Both these teams are more than willing to settle for field goals. It'll probably stay close, but not really back and forth.
All right, Geoff, do you agree it might be close, but you're not here for this back and forth nonsense?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like, we're talking about a coach in Sean McVay who has been one of the, if not the least aggressive on fourth down over the last 3 years, like one of the least aggressive in the NFL. This guy, the stats bear it out. He loves to kick in situations where the stats say you should go for it. And what does that lead to? That leads to conservative play. It leads to games that stay within a score, like the entire game. If Sean McVay gets a chance, he'll tie the game instead of trying to be aggressive and go for the lead. I love that prop that says the game will be tied again after 0-0. -120 in a game with Sean McVay against a quality team in the Bengals. Yeah, you will probably see this come to fruition because even if the Rams get behind, they'll come back with Cooper Kupp and they'll tie the game. And if the Rams get ahead, McVay's just going to play conservative and let the Bengals catch up. So I love that one. The game will be tied after 0-0. Again, -120. I think those are good odds.
All right, Steve, which of these do you think are good odds?
Yeah, give me the game will be tied again. Like, the odds aren't right. I mean, if you get that again, shout out if you get 7-7 on the Super Bowl squares, 3-3-0-0, you're going to be loving it if that's the case. But these are two teams that also score some of the most points in the second half of the game. I mean, look at the slow start that the Bengals have been in basically in both of these two playoff games. If you look at their numbers during the season, second half points are averaging 13.6. Guess who's almost right above them? The Rams at 13.9. They're both within the top 10. So I mean, I would not be surprised if we get maybe a slower first half, but then, all gas pedal to the metal in the second half. So give me that game is tied once again after 0-0 -120. Boy, those odds should be a lot bigger. I'll take that all day.